Good afternoon, you crazy cats. I'm going to show you dialogue creation, and in the workshop video I'll show how I got to it using getting camera angles, Quen image edit, Z image edit, turbo, and it's easier than doing 3D modeling, which I used to do last year, to change camera angles, but it's still got issues. And I'm going to show you the dialogue scenes today and split it across a couple of videos going into more depth in the paid Patreon side, but I'll give you enough in the free side. You'll know what's going on, and of course workflows that I've used. So let's start by looking. This is of course AIMS, my storyboard management. I've added in now, if you were watching the last one, these extra sets of dialogue scenes. There's some problems and I'll discuss those after we've had a watch of it. Let's go. Can I help you?
Are you the English mustard thief?
I did not steal. What did that guy tell you?
He said to tell you that you left your bag in the restaurant car.
All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
So why does he call you that?
It's a long story.
It's a long train ride.
He wouldn't toast my bread and, well, started there.
You English are so funny. You have to have things your way.
Apparently not on the Gone train.
Maybe you need to lighten up a little bit.
You don't mess with a man's breakfast routine. On Mark, by the way.
Hi, Daniela. Pleased to meet you, Mark. Are you going to Darwin?
No, Catherine, I think.
You think? There's not much at Catherine, you know that, right?
Well, there's the Outback. I'll start there.
Okay, well, don't forget your bag out there, huh?
I'm sure you'll be along to let me know if I do.
Nice to meet you, Mark, who is English but not a mustard thief.
Nice to meet you too, Daniela. All right. This was, of course, done with LTX, all of it. I will show you, I didn't use the extending workflow just because I was testing things, and as you can see, there's no character consistency. There is a reason for that. At this stage, if you've been following what I've been doing, at this stage, I'm doing the opening sequences and I'm doing the first dialogue. And what that then gives me is 4 or 5 minutes of the start of whatever story I'm trying to develop. And I've started with these early shots of this guy, and I'm not happy with him. So I don't want to be training Laura's and getting character consistency yet. And while I'm developing everything, I'll see new faces. And as that happens, it's almost like testing out actors, like auditioning. And as this is happening, this final scene, I'm actually starting to like these last two guys.
You English are so funny.
This guy actually looks like a famous actor, and I can't think who. So I'm a little bit wary of using that. It's routine. Where's the last one? And the last one... On Mark, by the way. This guy. I'm very tempted.
Hi, Daniela.
Where is he? Let's get a look. He just starts fitting the bill for me a bit better, and some of his mannerisms through there, it just got some of the things I need. So I might start and try and develop this guy out as a character. I've going off this guy at the beginning, there's just aspects about, it's really funny. Once you get too much freedom to choose, you can't choose. It gets difficult. So at some point I'll have to force myself, and that's where I set the opening scene development is where I'll go, right, pick the characters, don't worry about it too much for now. But none of this will happen. I'm now at the stage where of this is from, I keep doing this to you guys, but this is from Great Southern Land. I'm turning it into a movie. That's the plan. And this is the opening scenes. That won't be the opening dialogue. The other thing, which I won't discuss today, I was going to, but there's a lot more to get through, and I'll save it for another time, is using AI, LLMs to get the story arc developed, to get everything developed and checked that it's going to work. And I've been having to work quite a bit on that, and the dialogue itself isn't really done. So it's going to be test and measure, and this was a good example of that. I'm not sure it even made sense to anyone. But I did meet a girl called Daniela on the train who was South American, and this combines a few other incidents into that just neatly. But so that's what I was kind of doing there, just to see how that would play out, because I've got to learn all this myself. But anyway, so let's just go through this. This, if you recall, was from the ending sequence of the opening sequence, which had a whole kind of montage of video and music and a recollection scene, which doesn't really work, and I've got to go back to it. I've changed the music already to something a bit better, I think, but I won't bore you with that today. So it comes out into that, and then the next scene...
Can I help you?
Are you the English must?
Now, what you'll notice... is that they weren't clean cuts. There's stuff like the train keeps changing direction. This is one of the problems I run into quite a lot. It's little things that can cause huge problems, and one of them is change direction. So each time you're running a new shot, the train could be going one way or the other, and you can try telling it to go one way and it won't do it, or it will do it. It's very variable. And these are problems we'll have to navigate as we develop this stuff, as we develop the scenes out and learn what the problems will be.
The English mustard thief?
I did not steal. What did that...
The quality. Let's talk about the quality. I did it at 480p originally. This is at 720p. It's at 180p. Why is it at 180p? Oh, I know why. Because I put everything through... Excuse me. I did these as individual clips. They ended up being that size. You can see there, 2560 by 1408, because I put them through Flash VSR to tidy them up.
All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
So why do...
Which, for the most part, they did a pretty good job. Side on, I mean, she's breaking up there and it's all a bit plasticky. But these are also things we're going to have to consider as we go. I've been speaking to some of the devs at LTX, and it's very clear that they have quite a few things that will update in the next releases that will be improvements. One of those seems to be character consistency, but because they're getting feedback from the open source herd and people like me now, it's all going to influence what they work on, which is great. So I don't want to do too much now, knowing that a release that might improve other things is going to come out soon. And there's already nodes that I can add in that can do more things, and I have to go and learn them. I was talking to one of the guys there last night about it. So there's lots to learn as we go, and it's changing all the time. Major problems like direction of train is very difficult and might have to be fixed in post. Or work around it, stop the train on the track and don't have anything move, and then you don't have that problem. There's no reason. It used to stop quite a bit on the Garn. This is on the Garn, me going north, by the way. Yeah, I will show you just quickly. Just this morning, I tested a couple of if you remember watching, if you look at my videos, you can see Braveheart, Mel Gibson. If you watch that one, the extended video, it uses an extension where it blends from the one to the next. Kind of worked, kind of didn't. Let me show you that quickly. And then I'll talk through that one. This is about 46 seconds, so I'll show you up to a point.
Can I help you?
Are you the English mustard thief?
I did not steal. What did that guy tell you?
He said to tell you that you left your bag in the restaurant car.
All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
So why does he call you that?
It's a long story.
It's a long train ride.
He wouldn't toast my bread and, well, started there.
You English are so funny. You have to have things your way.
Apparently not on the Gone train.
Maybe you need to lighten up a little bit.
You don't mess with a man's breakfast routine. On Mark, by the way.
Hi, Daniela. Pleased to meet you, Mark. Are you going to Darwin?
No, Catherine. I think.
You think? There's not much at Catherine, you know that, right?
Where's the Outback? I'll start there.
Okay, well, don't forget your bag.
Okay, so first thing, this was done with I got someone else's workflow. I got hold of someone else's workflow, ran it through. I tried stopping the train. That worked. Makes more sense to do that. And of course, I ran the whole thing through the extension, so it blends in. Unfortunately, the quality wasn't as good as when I was running it in single shots. They had the same workflow, but with a few things missing that I had to add in to make it work for me, because it was doing that freeze frame and stuff like that. But the other thing I noticed was using the Laura's, it went back to her hand positioning stuff. And if you look at the first version of that other workflow.
Can I help you?
Are you the English most?
This is 480p, so, and it's got me asking a few questions on how to deal with upscaling, because 480p happened a lot quicker and with less ooms, and I can push through the ooms at 720, but it still takes 50 minutes to do 50 seconds. But this one took about 20 minutes, I think, to complete, but it had other problems.
I did not steal. What did that guy tell you?
He said to tell you that you left your bag in the restaurant car.
All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
So why does he call you that?
But you can see the character was more, I felt more emotionally involved rather than doing all this hand moving she was doing in my ones. And I think that's the Laura's causing that. But my problem is, as soon as I went out of 480p to 720, I got freeze frame. So there's, you know, more stuff I've got to look at. I also like that the camera moved about a bit in this one. So I'd like to run it at 480p and then find a way to upscale from there, or push the characters' faces back in, because the rest of it actually looks all right. I don't mind this blur. It's kind of an aesthetic I like. What I don't like
Call you that?
is all the
It's a
missing
long story.
faces and
It's
broken
a long
faces.
train ride.
It doesn't quite work, but I like all the camera movement and had stillness there again. So there's more experimenting to be done, but for now, it's given me the structure. And this brings me to the end. If you remember, I've done all this train journey and a bit of scenery from the outback, informing the audience. I've opened with a closed, cold open, it's called, which shows something that happens later, but without revealing what quite or explaining it. Gone into a bit of a reminiscent scene here, which doesn't work. It's pretty hard to do that right, and I've got to try different methods to make it feel right. And that's also where I've been consulting with LLMs to get some ideas, not using them as gospel. But what did work and what didn't work with the camera angles, I didn't like it going from there. That was all right, that one. It something not quite right about it. Not just the quality, I mean the behaviour. And when it jumps to the next bit, it doesn't work.
Can I help you?
That I find jarring and a bit confusing. I think anyone watching would too, because you're like, even if they were the same person, that movement feels too drastic. They need to have more conversation or go to another shot, I think. And there's a lot of things that you need to that you will start learning about if you're trying to do this, like the 30-degree rule and the 180-degree rule. The 180-degree rule is, I have obeyed it there, and I've obeyed it all through this, which is you stay on the same side of the actors, because if you cross over, everything becomes confusing for the viewer. But it hasn't worked from going from here to here. And I don't think it works going back again, where it goes. Now this worked, going from there to there. You've got the guy's head. She's fairly nicely framed. I kind of like the framing of this. That's probably my favourite shot. Then putting him there, and I don't think that worked going back to there again. Now what I do have, and what I did have, was some other choices. Let's just quickly show you those. Okay, I had a variety of not very, that was a better shot. I would want her turned the other way slightly. That just looks completely wrong. The dude, it would need fixing up, and the aspect ratio is a bit wrong. But that position's probably a lot better. And switching between that and her there is probably going to, is that going to work? I mean, you're still on the 180-degree rule. You're safe. you're staying on this side, but somehow that doesn't feel quite right. So I was looking for the better shot position for him, and I didn't find it. I tried a few other angles. You can see they're changing the people. That was a bit too much going on and a bit out of focus. The other problem I'm definitely finding is you need to be really close in to get the lip sync quality. And even with this one, that was too far out. But I went in a little touch closer and then I started having problems and I gave up fighting it. I'm not quite sure what it didn't like, but going into that a little bit tighter, it didn't do it very well. And I also wanted some of this hand activity. Initially, I did both, but the 30-degree rule is another important one, and that is where when you change camera, you change at least 30 degrees. So you don't go zooming in a bit, because otherwise you can make it feel like one of those time jumps, or whatever they're calling it. And I've seen it used. I've started noticing it being used in certain Netflix shows and things, but I'll be honest, I wouldn't trust any of the people directing stuff on Netflix or Amazon, because I don't think that half of them know what they're doing. I think they're hiring some pretty whack people at the moment, and which is great because it sets the bar nice and low for us to come in. But I'd be going to more professional filmmakers and directors to be informed, because there's been a couple of times where I've noticed something and gone, oh, that didn't look right. Why have they left that in? These people are being paid a lot of money to be professional about it. So anyway, but the 30-degree rule is if you're going to move from this shot, you've got at least 30 degrees out from it. It's not a rule. You can break it. Rules are there to be broken. That's half the idea of them when you're making art. But it's also, you discover some things don't work and you wonder why. What else do I need to tell you about this? I kind of saved this guy. I like this guy, but he very much looks like an actor, and I don't know who. But I'm probably going to go with this guy, and how I'm going to get him out of there and get character consistency is going to be the subject of the next period of time for me. This was actually an all right shot. I never used it, but that position feels good. I think there's something in the foreground there that gives it a kind of comforting, enclosed feeling. I don't know, I'm making stuff up now, but that's kind of how I felt about it. What did I need to mention? Yeah, VibeVoice. Now, what you'll notice with this as well, I did all this with VibeVoice in sets of 4, but using multi VibeVoice. Let me just open that for you. Current workflows, the VibeVoice. Right, I'll save this into my VibeVoice section, and you can have this workflow. What we've got here, you can see this is multi-voice speaker, so it's just using the multi-voice. I've kept the single one down here, which you'll be familiar with if you've downloaded it already. I'm now sticking normalizers in. About -23 is the right set for LUFS, and that just controls the kind of loudness of it, and it's well controlled when you want it that way initially. That's me going in. I better zone that out. It wasn't really that woman at all. So you can see that was the first one, speaker 1, speaker 2. And what I loved about, I'm mucking around with that at the moment. Yeah, it's not there. But what I loved about it was it knew which people were talking. I didn't actually have to prompt anything. The only prompts I gave it was to a man and a woman are talking on a train. That was it. When I put too much in the prompt, that was one of the things I was going to mention. When I put too much in the prompt with LTX, using an image in to drive along audio, it changes the scenery. So less prompt is better in that situation, and let the audio drive it. This is the workflow I was using, which is the old Braveheart one. Let me actually just load up a proper one. So here you go. Here's the full full length. This is the other guy's, but as I showed you, I had to adapt it. Now, he has some interesting things in here. I won't share this because it's not got anything different in, really. It's just not laid out as tidily. And other than having these audio separations, which you can, I had not seen this before, and I actually had this installed, and you can separate music out. This is from Phil Notes. Yeah, the person, I complained about whoever does this, Machine Delusions, it's them. So I actually went, I'll let you off now, because that's quite a cool, audio separation is quite cool. Anyway, what you got here, so this is what I ran it through, and as you can see, I just kept it really simple. A man and woman talking to each other, the camera remains static, does not move. If I put anything more in there, it started doing a lot of those random changes you saw, which it did anyway once in this one. And I needed these two Lauras to stop the camera, to keep the camera still. I don't want the camera moving about too much in case it does weird things. You can always do it in the mix with zoom, dolly ins and so on. You can't take it out, so it's kind of easier to not have it generally for dialogue, my opinion. And this is also part of what helps it fix the freeze frame issue. And the problem with that is I prefer the lip sync driven interaction without them in, but it gets, once it goes to 720, the frame freezes, so it doesn't work. Like I said, I'm talking to those devs, and there's a few extra tricks that I now have to look at, but it's also complicated that you have to know exactly how your workflow works and its temperament and personality before you start introducing tricks, because otherwise you don't know what's going wrong and you can end up looking at 1,000 wrong things that you twiddle and then don't know where you're at, and you can lose days doing that. So I prefer to get familiar with the workflows, and this is the first time I've really been running it seriously with dialogue, LTX, other than mucking about just to see what it did. So now I'm starting to see where it goes. What I'll probably do next time is jump back onto a different, actually I might go one more round of dialogue, the next step of dialogue on from this, just because I'm getting familiar with it, and just because I actually need to look at character consistency and how good it is keeping it with the dialogue, and if there's a way to use 480p rather than 720 just because it's quicker, and then push the characters back in. That'd probably be ideal, but so far I've not actually found a way to push characters back in like One Animate does. And One Animate's no good because it won't really do 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second at 10 seconds long. Not on my machine anyway. So I'm still looking for, I spoke to the devs at LTX and they went, yeah, probably do it. But that wasn't, I didn't hear, yeah, of course, here's the workflow. Not hearing that made me go, I don't want to be guinea pigging new ideas right now. I don't want to be that guy. I want it already made for me, served on a nice silver platter. Thank you very much. Anyway, I'm whittling again, as I usually do. And let me just go once through what my little list of things I was going to talk about. I tried to nag negative prompt out her arm waving because she looked like she was giving a presentation. She kept pushing her arms out, but that didn't work. I didn't change the seed. That's another thing to try. I keep it fixed just so I know, get familiar with the runs and then you know what's going on. Flash VSR I used on the extended ones. On the single ones. On the extended, I didn't bother doing it. I just wanted to see how good it looked to 720 in this guy's workflow. No better. So I'll stick to my one just because I'm familiar with it. And train shots. Challenging, but Quen now does have, let's open it in something more. Ifram view, by the way, is I highly recommend getting this. It's very useful for batch image stuff, which at some point you're going to want. Yeah, I used this is Quen getting me angled shots around a guy. Very good for the angled shots. I'm not finding it very good for the quality, but that's all going to come in later. When I have to resolve the character consistency issue. And the other thing was, you know, you have to fiddle around a lot. I had to get the opposite side of the train, and it doesn't look right, but it looks roughly right. I had to use Krita. I use that Krita open source image editing software. It's brilliant for all sorts of things, and it ties into Comfy UI. And then I had to combine them, and you can see I was getting different characters here as well, and I had to combine them in. There was all sorts of things going wrong. In fact, I had to build a Quen in painting workflow, which was a pain in the arse, and lost a couple of days just to that. And you can see going through these where you can see where I've hacked heads back on. Look at that, shrunken head. And and then the in painting is a disaster from Quen, but I'll eventually kind of get it working and get something. And I think I went with this one in the end and then swapped them both out using Z-Image. So there's a lot of work going on trying to get yourself, even to get to this position where I had the full carriage shot. Where did I do that? Yeah, here's another interesting one. Trying to put her in the shot and then make it blend in. I ended up finding a relight. Look, it turning him into a woman. Oh, what's going on there? I want that. Yeah, pasted on there. Look at that, it's real cut and paste. It doesn't blend in. There's a relight Laura. There we go. It's better. He's got problems though, you can see here. And that relight Laura in Quen, and then fixed it up with Z-Image, I think. The relight might have done an all right job for one of them. I think one of these I went with. But there's a lot of fiddling around to get shots. So yeah, to get this woman in the first place, because I needed a female character, I stole something, you know, Adobe, straight off the internet, full-size person. I knew the woman I wanted to base it on was Tanya Raymond. I knew I wouldn't use her, but that's that kind of look, a South American woman. I immediately changed the trousers, didn't need that skeleton look there. And eventually ended up with something that was clearly trained on Keira Knightley. That's just no good. But that was as close as it got it to where it needed to be. And then I stuck it in the 360 degree with the 360 Quen multi-angle and just fired them out. And then I used, you get quite a plastic face with Quen, but what I'm finding is Z-Image, very, very low denoise, and that's too uniform, isn't it? You can see I probably used that one in the end for the train shot. Yeah, Seed VR 2K to get it up to high standard. You still get this. Look at that tiling going on and stuff. But for now, and once you've zoomed that out a bit, and once you've run it through LTX-2, it's as good as you need to get to for my purposes at this stage. Okay, so I had a lot of original train shots of the actual Garn I wanted to try and keep the structure. It's a terribly uncomfortable train when you sat on it for 3 days. But you've already seen some of these shots. And then I've got the 3D. I did the 3D Quen 3D, multiple cameras, going around it. And there you go. There's the one I ended up on. So I had to go. There's some great position shots. So that'd be great camera shot. That's another great camera shot, but I just kind of haven't got around to using these yet, so I've stuck them all in a folder. That was all right, but it was too far away, and I think this is the one where I zoomed in. God, that looks real. It might be. That was real, but I swapped the seats out. That's the red seats. So just trying to keep some things, you know, there's a real one. Oh, memories. Yeah, trying to keep some things legit as you develop this. Look, I think that'll do for today. I don't have to give you an hour, do I? So I will share the VibeVoice workflow with the multi-voices, which also now has audio separation tools thrown in there. If you have music you want to chop up. A step I've been looking at, it's fantastic. The turbo version, it's got potential that I'm definitely going to use because it's so much quicker to rip off a music theme, make it copyright wise different enough that it wouldn't be the original but captures the emotion. Whether it's copyright legit or not, I'm trying to find out, because obviously it's been trained on something and I doubt they paid for copyright privileges, so of course it's probably no good, but it is good for ideas. And if you remember, I was talking about struggling with capturing the emotion. Well, it's a really good way to capture the emotion of a song that you love. Sorry, we've still got building works around here. Capture the emotion of a song but change it, and you can put in the style you want, like progressive house if it's rock or something like that. So change it into a different style as well, and you can obviously use the denoise to control how much like the original it is. And it did that song that I was talking about, changed it completely, and then I'll take that into Reaper and butcher it some more, because I can now separate everything out using the FL Audio to separate stuff, and that gives me a little bit more control to then adapt it into something that won't be copyright issued, or probably still will be these days. I don't think we're going to get away with much by the end of it. In there, audio outbound, that's just got that Melband row former, which strips out background noise and normalizes the vocal, and yeah, normalizing it in the way in too, because she was quieter than he was, and it stayed that way anyway, actually. But yeah, about 4 lines per 10-second lip sync worked. I needed to actually leave bigger gaps in some areas, so that's another consideration, but that's just getting familiar with working with it. But I'll definitely be using this method again, because doing it in VibeVoice, then taking it to the extension video to run it, it feels like they're actually having a conversation. I think you could agree with that. It did to me. So I'll let that play out at the end. The one I've done so far, it's got a lot needs fixing, but it's a step in the right direction. And I'll probably be looking at character consistency next. So that will do for today. Thank you for coming along, and thank you for membership and everything like that, because it's really helping me feel inspired to keep doing this stuff and keep sharing it. Okay, that'll do. Thank you.
Can I help you?
Are you the English mustard thief?
I did not steal. What did that guy tell you?
He said to tell you that you left your bag in the restaurant car.
All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
So why does he call you that?
It's a long story.
It's a long train ride.
He wouldn't toast my bread and, well, Started there.
You English are so funny. You have to have things your way.
Apparently not on the Gone train.
Maybe you need to lighten up a little bit.
You don't mess with a man's breakfast routine. On Mark, by the way.
Hi, Daniela. Pleased to meet you, Mark. Are you going to Darwin?
No, Catherine, I think.
You think? There's not much at Catherine, you know that, right?
Where's the Outback? I'll start there.
Okay, well, don't forget your bag out there, huh?
I'm sure you'll be along to let me know if I do.
Nice to meet you, Mark, who is English but not a mustard thief.
Nice to meet you too, Daniela.